This is a very, very exciting day for all of us here. My name is Richard Arcara. I'm a district court judge in the Western District of New York, and I am pleased to be here at the Jackson Center, and I'm both honored and privileged to welcome to Western New York the Chief Justice of the United States, John G. Roberts, Jr. When I received a call from Greg Peterson asking if I would introduce the Chief Justice, I was delighted, and I accepted immediately. Throughout my career, I have had the good fortune of introducing a number of very, very distinguished individuals. I've introduced senators, I've introduced congressmen, I've introduced chief judges of the circuit courts, I've introduced circuit judges, I've introduced governors. I've had this opportunity. I have never had the opportunity of introducing a justice, much less the Chief Justice. I know that today is not only exciting for me, but also for the entire Western New York community. It was all over the radio this morning. It was all over television this morning, Chief Justice, that you were going to be here today. We are, as a district, are thrilled to have you here. An event honoring the life and the legacy of Justice Robert Jackson. As many of you may know, our new federal courthouse in Buffalo will be dedicated, it was dedicated about a year ago. And we could not be more pleased and proud than when last fall President Obama signed legislation naming the new courthouse after Justice Robert H. Jackson. In preparing for today's remarks, I reviewed countless articles and papers about Chief Justice Roberts and all his significant achievements and accomplishments, which I could not possibly go through here today. I will mention just a few as I take you through a brief journey through the Chief Justice Roberts' life and legal career to date. To begin, I note that Chief Justice Roberts, one of his great accomplishments, which he had absolutely nothing to do with, was he was born in Buffalo, New York. Same city I was born in. Chief Justice Roberts was a plant manager with the Bethlehem Steel Company in Western New York. When he was in second grade, the Roberts family moved to Long Beach, Indiana, where his father continued his work in the steel industry. There, Chief Justice Roberts attended boarding school, excelling in both academics and sports, so much that he went on to college at Harvard. He graduated summa cum laude, earning a BA in history after just 3 years. During the summers, true to his blue-collar Western New York roots, he worked at a steel mill to help earn money for his tuition. After college, he began a law career in earnest by continuing his studies at Harvard Law School, graduating magna cum laude in 1979, where he was the managing editor of the Harvard Law Review. No small task. With such an impressive academic record, it's no surprise that Chief Justice Roberts' illustrious legal career had an impressive start. He spent his first year after law school clerking for the distinguished and scholarly Judge Henry Friendly of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge Friendly is still widely regarded as a preeminent Court of Appeals judge of his era, and for that reason, Judge Friendly's decisions have been cited by many Supreme Court justices, including Chief Justice Roberts. While Judge Friendly is famous for having written his own opinions, one cannot help but wonder if Chief Justice Roberts didn't have at least a hand in writing to draft some of those most notable decisions, in which case he may very well be citing himself as for controlling his legal authority. I cite my own rulings as controlling legal authority too, but they somehow or other lack the legal significance of the Supreme Court of the United States. From 1980 to 1981, Chief Justice Roberts clerked for then Associate Justice William Rehnquist of the United States Supreme Court. This period of Chief Justice's biography is especially significant today, since the Jackson Center was dedicated 10 years ago yesterday on May 16, 2003, by former Chief Justice Rehnquist. Chief Justice Roberts' immediate predecessor and former mentor. It's an interesting parallel that the former Chief Justice Rehnquist served as a law clerk to Justice Jackson in his first job following law school. Following his clerkships, Chief Justice Roberts served as a special assistant to the United States Attorney General William French Smith. He then worked in the White House Counsel Office as Associate Counsel to President Ronald Reagan, the president that appointed me. For 4 years he worked there. In 1986, Chief Justice Roberts left government service to join the New York Times, referred to as, and I quote, the blue-chip Washington law firm of Hogan and Hartson. After 3 years in private practice, he left and he returned to government service as the Principal Deputy Solicitor General for President George H.W. Bush. In his role as Principal Deputy Solicitor, he argued many cases before the Supreme Court on behalf of the United States government. I would also note that Justice Jackson served as a Solicitor General from 1938 to 1940, demonstrating yet another parallel between the lives and legal career and paths of Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Jackson. In 1993, he returned to Hogan and Hartson as a partner, and there he spent the next 10 years as the head of the firm's appellate practice group. While most lawyers dream of arguing just one case before the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Roberts argued 39 cases there, and by all accounts, his legal arguments were a model of excellence in appellate oral advocacy. Legal experts who study the Supreme Court and the attorneys who regularly appear there have called Chief Justice Roberts, quote, the best Supreme Court advocate of his generation, end of quote, and, quote, the gold standard, end of quote, to which lawyers aspire. I argued one case before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that certiorari was improvidently granted. In other words, I didn't do a very good job. Needless to say, I was quite nervous on that day. I think that Roger Parloff, a senior editor for CNN, who listened to all the tapes, the 39 arguments of Justice Roberts, put it best when he commented that the future Chief Justice Roberts, quote, seemed to anticipate every question and responded instantly in complete grammatical sentences, salted with down-to-earth analogies and occasionally wicked wit, end of quote. It was during his second stint at Hogan and Hartson that Chief Justice Roberts reconnected with Jane Sullivan, whom he had first met in 1991, who was a magna cum laude graduate from the College of Holy Cross. Jane earned her master's degree in applied math from Brown University and a law degree from Georgetown. She is presently the managing director of the Legal Recruiting Company. The Roberts married in 1996 at St. Patrick's, Washington, oldest Catholic cathedral, and they have 2 lovely children. In 2003, President George Bush appointed John Roberts to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. I will refrain from quoting the New York Times article, which mentions Chief Justice Roberts' law firm salary at the time he re-entered government service. He may want to mention it. But applied math tells us that he must have felt a very strong calling to return to public service. Some consider the D.C. Court of Appeals a stepping stone for appointment to the highest court in our land. Thus, it came as little surprise when just 2 years later, President George Bush nominated him to replace Chief Justice Rehnquist as Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. In preparing for today, I read that Chief Justice Roberts often spoke about his great admiration and respect for Justice Jackson. This seems fitting not only because we are privileged to have the Chief Justice here today, speaking at the center, which honors the life and the legacy of Justice Jackson, but also because of the many similarities between Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Jackson. Both are considered outstanding legal writers and scholars. Both rose to the highest levels of government service as both advocates and as judges. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you the Chief Justice of the United States, Chief Justice Roberts. Thank you.